Hey everyone, it's Robert and you're watching Sidestep Adventures, and Cody and I are out here and we are in the middle of this very well manicured, very pretty church graveyard that still belongs to an active church and is still being actively used. But we're not going to look at these graves out here today. I've got something else to show you guys that I think is pretty fascinating, so let's go check it out. So you can see this is the reason why we're here today. This little portion in the back of the cemetery seems less cared for. Not entirely lost, but these are some really fascinating stones, headstones out here. They're much larger than the ones that I normally see and really interesting. And I almost wonder, because all of the graves that are right in that area out there are new, 2010, 2012 were some of the dates that I saw. Almost wonder if this wasn't a separate family plot that has nothing at all to do with this cemetery. I've seen that happen before, but this is the only section that seems to be not quite as cared for as the rest of the cemetery, which is kind of interesting and not entirely unusual. We do see it happen a lot in cemeteries. There'll be some graves lost in the woods just on the edge of the cemetery. Look how much is written on that stone right there. I can't actually read anything that it says at the moment, not without my light. And look at that interesting carving up there. I don't know what that is. I'm sure one of y'all will. We'll just kind of come over to this one. You can see the weeping willow and the gravestones beneath it. And again, I can't read anything yet. I'll get my light in just a minute and we'll read them, but I thought we'd take a look around first. I mean, someone's obviously bringing flowers out here, or has in the past. The flowers are pretty withered away now, but or withered away. I don't know if that's what you say for artificial flower, but anyway, I wonder if that's a grave right there. It probably is, and that's a really large headstone out here. I think that's the largest that I've seen in these old cemeteries. But I'm about to grab the flashlight so we can read some of these. Before we start reading, I figured we'd take a look at the old cast iron fence. There's a section of it right there. That actually belongs right there, because there's the no, there's the old gate to go into it. So I do wonder if this wasn't a separate, maybe even an earlier cemetery, and it just happens to be beside the church graveyard. So at the top of the stone says, "Here lies buried William T. Crawford. We loved him for his heart and his generous nature. We loved him for his great good, for his great goodwill towards all, for within his breast rested no malice. But all our love, all our tears, all our efforts could not stay the hand of death, for he was cut down in the springtime of life, and at the early age of 32, he died 17th November, 1850. That's definitely an older one for out here. I consider any graves, at least in my area, that are older than the Civil War era, 1860s, to be older graves, because this area wasn't really populated until the 1830s. The subject of this epitaph, Mrs. Menarvid D. Rutherford was born December 25th, 1823, died October 22nd, 1845, aged 22 years. A husband's fond affection has erected this stone to mark the last resting place of a devoted and lovely wife. Were I to attempt to praise words, did I read that right? Were I to attempt to praise words would rail, and the stranger would gaze in unbelief. But her character demands, and justice, this one I can't read. Is that R-E? Oh, and justice requires me to say she was amiable and affectionable. Her love for her husband and infant son knew no limit in all the relations of life. Her conduct would bear the strictest scrutiny. Her sweetness of temper and lovely disposition could not stay the hand of death. She was called from earth to heaven. And this one has a maker's mark at the bottom too. You can kind of clean that off. It's Madden, M-A-D-D-E-N, and Adams from Columbus, Georgia. And of course, today Columbus is right up that road up there, maybe about 5 miles. Back then, it would have been closer to 20 miles away because the city has grown out pretty far. I wanted to see if there was a maker's mark on that one, but there's not. These are some really, really interesting epitaphs on these graves, and really, really personal. So there's writing on this one. It says, beneath this tablet has been buried the body of Pleasant H. Crawford. I'm gonna wipe it off a little bit. Just ripening into manhood. Every earthly pleasure was opening to his view. Every earthly pleasure was opening to his view. Prospects of brightest order were justly his. Maybe if I shadow it and shine the light. Oh, there we go. There we go. Let me start over on that. I figured it out. If I shadow it, I can read it. Just ripening into manhood. Every earthly pleasure was opening to him, to his view. Prosperity of brightest order were justly his, but death, regardless of the nearest human ties, has departed a widowed mother of her beloved child, and called brothers and sisters to weep over the grave of a noble and generous relative. He died on the 27th day of July, 1841. Wow. Aged 20 years. Wow, that is definitely a super early grave here And so many of these people died young. That's incredible, really. Now this stone, which is the biggest of them all. By the partner of his joy and sorrow in life, this monument has been erected to the memory of, it looks like Major Hardy Crawford. He lived, respected, and died lamented by all who, let me move that tree out of the way, by all who knew him, an honest, kind human, benevolent, can't make that one out. He greatly added to the happiness of a large circle of friends and a devoted family. Departed this life June 10th, 1839, aged 46 years. Wow. 1839, that's definitely, I think one of the earliest graves that I filmed out here was 1836, and so 1839, that's definitely an early grave. All right, this one says, "Here lies our mother. She was born on the 27th of May, 1799, and died in Columbus, Georgia on the 17th of March, 1857. Let me see if I can shadow it again. Of her virtues, it is unnecessary to speak. To her family, they were known to strangers. It is a mother of no import, a matter of no import probably, and I can't make out the very last word. Dear mother, farewell, may we meet in heaven." Look for a maker's mark. There's not one. Wow, these are incredible. These are some of the earliest graves out here. Sorry I stumbled all over those epitaphs. They were kind of hard to read. Maybe I should bring some chalk or something. You guys always tell me that. That probably would have really helped out here. But this is really interesting. And so as we look back at this cemetery over here, I'm going to go ahead and walk in that gate over there where you can see some older graves. I just want to see the dates to see how close they are to these graves out here. But as far as I can tell, these are the oldest, and I really don't believe that these graves are connected to this cemetery. I just think the evidence kind of separates it, although I could be wrong. Also, if we step just here, there's a rather large indention right there that looks like it could be a grave. Wanted to see if there were any more, but I don't see anything else that really jumps out at me. Oh, okay, that's just a big trash pile in the woods right there, a bunch of tires and stuff. I thought it might be another grave. So look at this. On the end of this fence here is an official geocache. Let's take a look at it. Doesn't look like there's anything but black widows in there now. So just to give you an idea of the stark contrast in dates, this is from 1964, that's from 79 and 77 right there. All right, so I'm walking over towards those older graves that are in this cemetery. There's 2014 and 2015 there. So it seems like the newer graves are actually closer to the older graves over there, which is kind of why I'm thinking that that cemetery may not be connected to this one, or may not have originally been. That may have been just like a small family plot, and then at a later date they started burying out here, because of course we don't know what's in the green grass in there, but it looks like just empty land, and the older graves are within this wrought iron fence here, and on the other side of it I saw a Confederate grave over there. I didn't see the date on it, but of course we know that all of the graves we saw over there were pre-Confederacy. So this stone is pretty interesting because I would have thought it was older, but it's 2013. You can see this is 1899, this is 1957 and 1969. And this is 1905, so still a big time difference from the graves over there in the woods. All right guys, well I hope you enjoyed seeing this great old cemetery behind us today, and it's just kind of hidden in the middle of this other well manicured cemetery, and I think that's pretty interesting. Actually, I think this is a graveyard. It's a church cemetery, so it'd be a graveyard. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed seeing it, and I'm really interested to see what kind of information can be found out about these graves over here, to see if it's truly disconnected from the other cemetery, which I believe it is, because none of the dates add up. And even the way the cemetery is laid out, you've got these really old family here, and then 2000s and graves that aren't even 5 years old right in front of it. And even back over there, the graves, I didn't see any past the late 1880s, which is still 40 years newer than these. So I'm really fascinated by this. I've run into this before, finding a old graveyard or cemetery right next to a newer cemetery, and they actually weren't connected. They just kind of got put there by happenstance of time, maybe because there was a cemetery there already, they decided to put another one there. But I still think it's super interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next adventure.